We're all well aware of what the RBA can do to manage inflation, but what further levers can government pull to reduce the effects of inflation?
Sally?
Well,
you've been very critical of the RBA governor, so what do you think the federal government should be doing?
A report came out last week from the OECD, T.S. Coleman's OECD, which pointed to the fact that profits have driven inflation in Australia. Now, this is like a taboo subject that you're not meant to raise or to talk about, and everyone says, oh no, that can't possibly be the case. Yet I think us as ordinary Australians know it's the case. Like, obviously, when the energy companies and the mining companies are doing so well, that flows through to prices. Obviously, we can see what's happening with airline prices, but also we see what's happening with the supermarkets as well, and they're all delivering big profits, all of them. And so on one hand, we're all really hurting, and on the other hand, there's this protection of their profits, even if they're not increasing their margins, although we know the energy companies certainly are. And that we've got to start talking about this. We need more scrutiny on this issue because it's harder to hide when there's scrutiny put on this issue.
Do you think the federal government should be intervening on interest rates?
No.
Well, that's what the Greens are calling for, right? They're saying, sack the RBA governor, use your power to intervene. What do you think?
No, I think that the Reserve Bank being independent is important. I think that there's been a problem with the board. I think there has been groupthink happen there. I do think that they see things through a certain prism and are out of touch. I think they do not understand wages, and you don't have to listen to me, you just have to look at every single wage prediction they've made and it's been wrong. And the fact that they are now saying that, we put up interest rates, not because wages now are driving inflation, people are going backwards, like real wages are going dramatically backwards, that it might happen in the future. I think that if you make predictions based on something like that, which I think is wrong, it's a terrible situation we're now in, that they're making decisions to put up interest rates and crush ordinary people. So I do think there needs to be pretty drastic reform, but I still think they should be independent.
Keith, going to the question, which was what levers does the federal government have to pull, what do you think they should be doing? What would you do if you're in government? Yeah, so fiscal policy matters as much as monetary policy, and right now there's a perception that the government is a bystander to inflation. Wait, I want to pick you up on that. Yeah. Perception, or is it reality? Well, I would say it's a reality, but it's also a perception because... Well, perceptions don't really matter. Reality does. Reality does matter. Where's the evidence that it's just a bystander? Well, the evidence is that we've seen interest rate rise after interest rate rise, and it's hitting people really hard. It's hitting younger people even harder. I was struck by the Commonwealth Bank's comparison of the first quarter of this year with the first quarter of last year, and those under 50 are getting hit particularly hard than those over 50. There's no doubt about it. So what would you do if you're in power? Well, there's some things that we need to look at, and Sally raised the corporate profits issue. There's some issues with that particular study, but we can't ignore it. It is an issue. I'm on the House Economics Committee, and we are looking into how we can improve competition policy. And there is some argument that the size of our economy, it's the 12th largest in the world, lends itself to oligopolies. And oligopolies tend to have oligopoly profits. And so I think there is a need for a review of competition policy in this country. There is a need to bring productivity back up again. And yes, we can have wage rises, but we need corresponding productivity increases as well. If we do that, then it won't be inflationary. Just want to get some clarity on what you just said. You're saying that the point that Sally McManus made, quoting the OECD, you agree with and think has to be part of the discussion? In part. We cannot ignore it, and we cannot ignore the issue of large corporate tax rates. So you do think that profits are contributing to our inflation problem? It can. There are flaws in that study, but I think it is an issue that we can look at. Is that what's happening now? It is. I'm not a trained economist. I studied economics, but I would never pretend to be a trained economist. But I think it is part of what's happening now, particularly when you look at our share market. Our top 50 companies haven't changed much over the last 50 years compared with the United States. Again, that is a sign of poorer competition compared to other countries. So I think we need to look at competition policy again. And again, to Labor's credit, on the Economics Committee, we are looking at that from a bipartisan perspective. So it's not really a wages issue per se, if you look at that study. If profits are part of the story, why aren't we hearing about it? Well, we're hearing about it from you now, but we don't hear about it a lot from your side of politics.
Well, it's also, there's lots of things. There's about government spending. Government spending is inflationary, particularly off-budget spending.
Yeah, but I want to take you back to the profits, because it's the new thing here.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, look, and it's important. It is important. And when you look at the PwC issue, that last question, that was about reducing tax rates here, about shifting those offshore. So when you purchase something through Apple, you know that you purchase that here, but it gets sent off to the Virgin Islands or Singapore, and that's where the tax rates are deemed. So I think we can do better for Australians to ensure that we're not just shifting it all onto the Reserve Bank, and we're increasing competition and productivity. There's many different levers to pull, but at the moment it does feel like it's all been left to the Reserve Bank.
Thenu?
Look, I'm not a trained economist by any means, but I think there is a fundamental flaw in our financial system if, during tough times, the people who have the least are always asked to give the most. And what we're seeing here is that that is exactly what's being asked of us. There's a question of intergenerational fairness here as well. Young people are being hit particularly hard, and we're constantly being asked to give up more and more. Young people are going, without more and more of their wages as they pay off an indexed HEX loan that is now 7% more than it was on before June 1st. We're paying more for rent, we're paying more for groceries, and some young people are also giving up really key essential things to meet these costs, things like medication, mental health support. And I don't think I have the solutions, and you are all much more trained to deliver these solutions than I am, but I think there is a genuine inequality here that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and obviously housing really has become a sort of lightning rod issue for your generation. What are the sorts of reforms that we need to be looking at to try and shift that intergenerational, some young people call it intergenerational theft, let's be honest.
Yeah, and so I think first of all, instead of calling it intergenerational theft, I think this is a problem for all of society.
Yes.
Like, young people aren't alone in this. These are your children and your grandchildren that are going to face increasing issues going into the future. And if we want to build an Australia that is prosperous, we need to address this issue. And so to your question about what can be done, when it comes to housing, we need to issue things like rent caps, especially when there are homeowners who have little to no mortgage and are passing on these interest rates. These interest rates, these home loans are increasing, and therefore rent is increasing, locking young people out of the rental market. And I won't even get started on locking people out of the housing buyers market as well. So it's a really unequal system at the moment. And we know that there was a report that came out saying that Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, 25% of people who have bought houses have actually bought a house without mortgages. And so these interest rate hikes, they're not affecting these people. They're affecting young people and vulnerable populations the most.
Sally, I want to come back to you about a little bit of unity I saw between you and Keith Wolahan.
A little bit.
A little bit. Look at come on. Keith's really trying to play it down now. But I saw it. You saw it, didn't you, Michael? I didn't. Yeah, I saw it. I know my eyes aren't failing me on this. Profits, which you've been making the point about for some time. How to tackle them then? Are the remedies that Keith talked about the right ones?
I wouldn't want to verbal him. I think that I respect what you were saying. You were just saying I thought that this needs to be considered, needs to be seriously considered. There was a report that was put out. We need to consider it. And I think that that's a really good step forward. Like, we just can't be ignoring things like that, especially when there's evidence on the issue of intergenerational, injustice, let's call it that, because it certainly is. I just have to say I agree with you on rent. I think what's been happening is just completely unacceptable. Having some type of rent caps or controls in some way is, like, what is the solution? Like, we can't be in a situation where people can't even afford housing, and this seems to be where we've got, and like you said, no one can even think about buying anything. But if rents are going up so much and the people passing it on, don't need to do so, it's absolutely unfair. And, this is a state government mainly issue, but I think needs to be looked at.
Absolutely. And the one other thing I will add is that since Federation, we are predicted to be the generation, millennials and Gen Z, that will be for the first time worse off economically than our parents, which I think is a pretty stark thing to come to terms with. And this is not just a question for young people. Of course, we see it as totally unjust. We see it as theft sometimes, but this is a problem that needs to be addressed by all of society because it involves our future prosperity.
Next, we'll hear from Alexander Lau.